What's happening, cabinets? It's me. Truly the dumbest. And today, I have a bit of a mix-up to my usual videos. But before I get into that, I'm back, of course, after a prolonged hand injury. I'm finally returning. Sorry, man, I'm really burpy right now. And, you know, today, with my return, I wanted to do a bit of an interesting video. Now, I, like I'm sure many other DVD content creators, or just DVD players as a whole, am a cocky asshole who thinks that I'm right and all my changes should happen. I'm sure most, anyone who plays this game with a bit of common sense, or whatever that one thing is called that makes it so you see what you're doing is dumb or something like that, would know that, would realize that we just like coming up with changes for killers we think is right, but in all reality probably isn't that right. But we don't care, because it's fun. And today, I'm going to turn that into a series. Now, hopefully the series I'll be able to get a video up of this series every other week. What the series name is going to be called, I don't know. You'll probably find out in the title, because I haven't thought of it really until just now. But up until this point. My bad. But today, I want to start off, obviously, with the OG himself, the Trapper. Because, let's be frank, he's the worst killer in this game. And he always has been, and he probably always will be. But, you know, it's fun. Why not try to fix him? Yeah. Well, on to the actual video part of this video. Jesus, that was awkward. Alright. So, for the series, I wanted to kind of do something a bit more interesting than just listing off changes I think should happen. I kind of wanted to do them in what I like to call a tier list format. As you can see here, this is my expertly created tier list thing, with all the changes I think should happen. So, without further ado, because I don't have anything else to say, let's just get straight into this, shouldn't we? Starting off with all traps start active, or yeah, I guess at the start of the trial, all traps are active. Now, I think this is probably one of the best possible changes for the Trapper. If Trapper's traps all started active, I really feel like it would cut down a lot of needed scavenging time for your ability. I don't know how really strong or well this would play out in the game. I would assume it wouldn't be that bad. I mean, at the most, you can get like one down, but to be fair, there's still traps usually placed poorly, so nonetheless, that this is one of the first changes that I think should happen. And out of all three tiers, I think this is maybe likely due to possible. Why are you back there? Due to possible coding issues or something like that. But still, you know, I think this would be a good change. I think this would be a strong change and would help with Trapper's early game quite a bit. Next, we have increased trap placement speed. Now this one, I think this is just a very likely change. Or once again, this one should happen. It very easily could. Trapper's really weird with his trap placement speeds. It's very unexpectedly slow. Like, I guess when they first developed him, they could have thought that he'd be too strong if he placed traps too quickly. And for people wondering, this would just be like my idea for this would just be like a Trapper's Glove 30% increase. I do have a little notepad thing here with listing my changes, or more in depth on the changes. I'm not going to show you though. But yeah, I think that he could do with a trap placement speed increase. Even with the Trapper Glove add-on, which is the add-on I was thinking, 30% increase. I don't think he's that strong. I still don't think he'd be strong, even if they made this base kit and then kept it as it is to give him like a 60% increase. I think that still wouldn't be that strong. I just really think he very, very deeply needs a trap placement speed increase, because it's easily one of his weaker qualities. But yeah, that's why I think very likely. It's also not that hard, wouldn't be that big of a change. Next, we have 2 traps per tile. Now, right off the bat, I'm just gonna put this in the maybe likely, because once again, I don't know how hard this would be to code or implement. Now this, of course, is a nerf. which seems kind of weird. You know, you're trying to, you know, I'm trying to come up with changes to make Trapper better, and I give him a nerf. But, you know, I think there's one strategy not a lot of people enjoy, and that's the Basement Trapper. It can be pretty hard to maneuver around. You know, it's like the same kind of vein as Basement Bubba, but a bit more strategic. And this is kind of something to negate that, you know, something to remove that kind of play style from this kit. Because honestly, not only do I not think it's a very healthy kind of play style, I don't think it's effective. And of course, you know, if people are going to play every game as Basement Trapper, it'll just, you know, start getting boring for the survivors, maybe for the killer, maybe it depends, but I don't know. I just think this is a change that should probably happen. I mean, it's definitely not a necessary one, like some of the other ones I've listed here, or in my opinion, but yeah, I don't know. I got really nothing else to add. So, to the next one, we got cannot get caught in his own traps, or as I have it listed here. Where do I have it listed? It's the same thing. So basically, the makeshift wrap should be base kit. Now this one's probably a bit of a weird one, kind of a random add-on to make base kit. But honestly, I think it would be smart. You know, it's like Trapper in a way. He's like a not mystic, but enhanced Trapper. You know, he's got bear traps. He's an enhanced person in a way. I don't know. I don't think it really makes a lot of sense for him to be caught in his own traps at all. I think it makes sense for him to just walk straight on through it. I mean, you know, that's like if Jason would to walk in his own traps, get caught, and spend 4 minutes removing his trap. No, odds are he'll be, you know, walking through it, get it stuck to his foot, rip his foot off, God knows, and then continue walking on that stump lane. I mean, even in the recent Prey movie, the Failed Predator, you know, he got traps thrown on him, he got traps yanked at him, he got stepped on traps, he just walked it off, he just threw it back at him. I think that makes a lot more sense than if he got caught in his own traps, you know, kind of a weird thing, in my opinion. I don't know, maybe that's just me. Well, moving on, because that's really it for that. Disabling traps injures survivors. Now this one, wait, where did I put this? I put this in the very likely. Yeah, okay, I was right. So this one needs a bit more explanation. On my spreadsheet, which would be helpful to show, wouldn't it? I have it so... okay. Survivors disabling a trap have a 50% chance of being injured or broken for 30 seconds. This is definitely probably the worst category you could have gone into, but I think personally that survivors disabling traps should have a chance to get injured. Now, why do I think this should happen? Well, you know, Trapper, one of the things, the only thing really that makes him worth playing is his traps, because that's the only unique aspect. So when you place traps, you know, you set up a good good web, I guess, even though that's a hag thing. You know, you get traps placed in good places, you know, it's very sneaky, very stealthy. And then, you know, survivors just start disabling your traps left and right. You know, you can't do anything to stop them. They just very safely, like very, I guess, risk-free, just disable your traps. I think that's unfair. I think that's genuinely an unfair aspect of his power that can just be taken away with no consequence. Because even with, like, Wraith, you know, there's still a chance that, you know, you failed the flashlight, you know, you can't light burn him, so he, boom, hits you in the face. With, Deathslinger, you know, you try to get object in the way, you still get injured if he holds it down. With Nurse, there's no way to play against her, so you just die. You know, there's for most killers that have a power that can be disabled, there's always a risk with it. Besides maybe Ghostface. Yeah. But beyond that, I just think it makes more sense. You know, in real life, if you're trying to disable a bear trap, unless you got a stick or something, which survivors don't, if you're not fast enough, your arm's gone. Like, it is gone. You know, you're not going to have that arm if you get caught in there. But yeah, so reason why I think it should be a 50% chance instead of a 100% chance is, like I just said, the possibility of you getting your arm out fast enough. And, you know, I think that add a bit of more of a fun element to playing against Trapper, you know, and even fun for Trapper. You know, there's a chance that, sure, your trap will get disabled, but Survivor will get payback for it. And yes, this is technically just the what was it? Which add-on? The Bloody Coil add-on. I'll get into that later. But you know, I don't know. I think this would be a good change. And of course, if some destroyer is already injured, make him broken for 30 seconds. I was deciphering between mending and broken, but I think mending is already used too much in killer abilities, and broken isn't used enough. So I figured, you know, why not give it something a bit more unique. Now for the next one, we have, where is it on the side? I can't find. There we go. Base movement speed buffed to 5 meters while not in chase. This one's an interesting one. I will admit that. Or by interesting, I mean very not likely to happen. But I think this would be a fantastic change. Recently, we've seen, mainly with Wesker, killers are, it seems like behavior's trying to mix it up with like base kit killer factors, like the tear radius with Wesker's, like I said, 40-meter tear radius. You know, of course, some killers have slower movement speed, mostly the range killers, but I think that making Trapper, or I think that diversifying the tear radius and the movement speed of killers as time goes on would make playing each killer more of a unique experience. You know, you feel different. You don't just play different, which kind of is weird. It makes no sense in a way, but I don't know. It makes sense to me, and maybe it doesn't make sense, but nonetheless, I put here specifically 5.0 to 5.2 because in all reality, I don't have any sort of clue what 0.2, or I actually don't. Is it 2%? I guess I'm gonna say 2%, or like a 20%, or whatever that adding 0.2 to the movement speed is. I don't really know how big of a change that is. Or is it 0.4? I don't remember if it's the base is 0.8 or 0.6 anymore. I'm sorry, my head's all out of whack. I think that some sort of movement speed increase, while not in chase, by the way, I don't think I read that off. This would only be when scavenging the map. I think if they increased his base movement speed while not in chase, it'll make, you know, approaching survivors easier. It would make finding traps easier. It'd be make collecting traps, moving them. I feel like it'd make his power as a whole a bit easier to use. You know, that's really all my reasoning for that one. So next we have 24-meter tear radius. Another one that I don't think would ever happen, but I think would be interesting. Now, the only other times I think I can think of a killer having a smaller tear radius is a stealth killer that in Pig are originally Michael, and then range killers. Or sorry, Huntress, since everyone else just gets, you know, shut the boot up their ass. I know this seems weird, a 24-meter tear radius. And honestly, I really don't have a surefire way to defend it. I feel like if there was a 24-meter tear radius, it would kind of make more sense in conjunction with his ability. I probably used conjunction wrong, but like let's say you start off the game, right? All traps are, let's say all these changes are in place. All traps are active, you have an increased movement speed, you start with your traps, you know. So in that time, there's usually about a 30-second to a minute window where survivors don't know what killer they're facing. And I think that if they were to give Trapper a bit of a smaller tear radius, it would work heavily in his favor to have a much easier early game. And I don't know if anybody's able to see patterns with this. Most of these changes were made, or I came up with to help with Trapper's early game, because Trapper, I think, objectively has the worst early game. And don't hit me with that Michael bullshit. It takes you 2 seconds to get out of tier 1. But I don't know. I feel like if they were to make Trapper's early game better, it would affect his overall gameplay throughout the match. And I think a 24-meter tear radius helps that quite a bit. You know, really, this is honestly probably the weirdest, or probably the most unlikely change that would ever happen. So I don't have any other way of defending that. So now on to the third to last, which is increased trap hitboxes. And this one is for sure a bottom. I don't think this is something that I would love to see, but I don't think would ever happen. I'm sure we've all had those moments where you place a trap and you're like, wow, this is such a great trap. But then survivors walk over it with ease. I can think of in my first ever recorded gameplay, I used it in the tier list video as Trapper. There was one trap that I kept on trying to get the Felix to walk into, but because it was like inch off where he was walking, like I can't explain it. I left the recording out too. You can go check out the gameplay, even though it's like 420p. Like he was just barely on the trap, and if it was a bit bigger, it could have probably got him. And I'm sure we've all had those moments, like I just said. And like it feels rough. It hurts for sure when when you're like, I'm gonna get this, he's gonna walk into it, and he just doesn't, even though it looks like, or it felt like he should. That's really my main reasoning for that. I mean, if they really want to, they can increase like the actual model size and make it a bit easier for counterplay. Nonetheless, though, I think that would be a helpful change. That probably won't happen. Now, the second to last one. If traps spawn on inner tiles, and honestly, I really don't see this one happening either, due to coding stuff. I think just like I described with, or in tandem, whatever it's called, with the base movement speed, and like the early game I was talking about earlier with the 24-meter tear radius, I think the trap spawning in the the inner tiles would help drastically with his early game. Because, traps, they have some of the one of the most RNG based abilities in the game. You can either have traps spawn in really good places, or you can have traps spawn on the corners of the map that you don't want to go get it. And I think that if they were to make it so the traps spawned on the inner tiles of the trial, it would make it so much easier and so much better to play Trapper, because you don't have to go completely out of your way. You can like more often than not find a trap and chase, or find one just early on, and I think that would work fantastic for his just for his gameplay as a whole, beyond just his early game. And if they mix it with the trap starting active, like, man, I think that would be a fantastic change. Just this alone would help just immensely with Trapper's gameplay. So without further ado, I mean, that's really all I got for that. We have his last change I think should happen to the Trapper, and that's the ability to carry 3 bear traps. And I'm sure this is obvious where this should go, and that is very likely. Now this one, like a couple others, deserves a bit more digging into, because I think he should only carry 3 traps. I don't think he should start the trial with 3, which seems a bit weird, because like, why would you make it so he has, or he can carry 3 but doesn't start with 3? Well, if you ask me, add-ons like the Trapper Bag are why. If you start off with more, I think it'll be a bit too strong. It sounds weird to say out loud now that I think about it, but I think that starting the trial with 2 traps is perfect. But being able to carry 3 at any time is even better. I really don't have a defense for why he shouldn't start off with, but like, I don't know. I just think that being able to carry 3 at all would be one of the best changes they could have done with it, or could do with him. I really don't got any other defense for the other half of it, but I'm sure I don't need to defend why you should carry 3. Well, here, let's do a bit of zoom in. So these are all the changes I think should be happening to Trapper base kit. I think that these would all be fantastic changes. None, as unlikely or weird as they should be. I'd be very interested to hear what you guys think about them in the comments down below. Now, as I mentioned earlier, whichever one right here, the disabling traps injured survivors, that is already an add-on. So why would I mention it? Well, that is what I'm going to move into next, which is my light add-on pass, which I'll explain in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so this is a bit of a, I'm sure this seems like a bit of a weird choice, just like most of my choices, because Trapper only had an add-on pass recently, but some of these changes are just making add-ons base kit, so I figured it'd be nice to go through his add-ons, fix or change them to make it so they're, it actually affects his kit better. Yeah, that didn't make sense. So for the first change, obviously Trapper gloves. I think it should be nerfed from 30 to 10%, which seems drastic, but that is if you're mixing it in with the base kit of increasing his trap speed by 30% that I mentioned just a few minutes ago. I think it'd be fine. I think 20% is fine, because if you have it like 30 on 30, like if you go 60 and then you have the faceting tools, which is 50, that'll be 80 plus 30, which is 110, and that's just like holy shit. But yeah, I think 10%, maybe 15, possibly 20. I don't know. 10% is what I chose. So for makeshift wrap, wait, no, I said that right. Why'd I go blah, blah, blah? For makeshift wrap, I just changed it so they, when he steps on traps, they stay armed instead of being disarmed, because the old makeshift wrap, you know, is now, I listed as a base kit change, so that's really it. Nothing too special with that. For coffee grounds, I decided to change because it's a bit weak. I just buffed the speed increase to 10% instead of the 5%. Nothing too drastic, nothing too interesting. For 4 coil spring kit, I don't remember what it did beforehand. I don't have it listed on this little thing. Wait, here, no, I got here. Beforehand, it just increased the bear trap disarm time by 33%. I don't think that's really fantastic, especially if you mix in with the base kit bloody coil thing. I don't think it'll be as useful as it is now. So I decided to change it to increase the chance of survivors being injured when interacting with a trap by 15%. So theoretically, a 65% if all the changes were to be, increased, which I think is a fair amount, especially for a yellow. Fasting tools, I also nerfed by 20% just to keep it matching with trapper gloves, and so it's not as strong. Once again, nothing too special. Tension spring, I changed it so whenever a survivor escapes a trap or is pulled out of the trap by the trapper, the trap will reset after 4 seconds. Kind of just changing it to what it was before, which is kind of weak. I think would people consider as one of his worst add-ons, which is automatically reset the bear trap of a survivor escaped from it, which is like odds of a survivor escaping your trap is incredibly low, especially if the trapper's in the area. So it kind of seems like a useless add-on. So, decide to give it more versatility, making it a bit more active throughout the game. But beyond that, nothing too drastic. Oily coil. This one originally had survivors that disarm a bear trap will have their aura revealed for 5 seconds once it's rearmed. I think that this is a really stupid add-on personally. Like, you have to go out of your way to reset a bear trap just to find the survivor who disarmed it. So I changed it to be when placing a trap, the aura of the closest survivor within a 16-meter radius is shown for 30 seconds. Which in reality, as well as bloody coil, does not match the item that they're supposed to be. I didn't think about that, and honestly, I'm too stubborn to change it, so disrespectfully screw off. And for the final change, the bloody coil, which made it originally so when a survivor disarms a bear trap, they're injured. Since I decided to make that partially base kit, I decided to change it in the same vein of the BFF add-on from the Legion. Whenever a survivor is injured or down throughout your traps, this add-on gains a token with a maximum of 4. For every token, the trapper's movement speed is increased by 1.5 meters while not in chase. So basically, if you add that up with the base kit change of about 5 meters per second or whatever the speed thing is, I also really don't know. That would be, math quickly, 6 bonus, 6, right? Yeah, 6. So it would be a 5.6 movement speed while not in chase. Is it supposed to be meters per second? I should have probably looked into it, but too late now. So it'd be like a 5.6 movement speed or meters per second movement speed while not in chase, which I don't know how strong that'll be. Quite honestly, I really don't. Well, I know that could not be fast at all. It sure as hell is fast, but yeah, that's pretty much it for that one. Actually went on much quicker than I expected. I thought it would take a couple extra minutes. That's it for the add-ons here. And now for one more change, or said changes, that might not go over well to the 3 people who end up watching this. But nonetheless, decided to give my hand at it. So say hello to my little friend, my map changes for Macmillan maps. So one thing I think people should talk about more is how miserable some of these maps are. You'll constantly see people doing videos about killer changes, but then they won't ever do map changes, which I think makes sense and is kind of dumb. Because, you know, to do a map change, you have to be, you know, pretty confident in your abilities. You know, you have to be very confident that you know this will be better for both sides of the player base as a whole. And luckily for you, my cocky ass has decided that I am the smartest man alive and decided to do map changes for every map that really needs them. Because in reality, there's a few maps in this game that... No, that's a lie. I think every map in this game needs some kind of change. But, you know, I did try to make these maps feel a bit more balanced for both sides rather than being fully killer-sided or fully survivor-sided. So yeah, really quickly before we get into it, a couple of things. I'm going to pull the thing up right here. The blue area is like basically empty area. Like, you know, this is where the wall would be at the edge of, like, at the end, the very outside, the outside line thing. You know, the thing on the outside? The thing. Yeah. The thing on the outside of the blue boxes are the wall, and then the blue boxes themselves are just, they're kind of just the gap between the wall and the loops. Pink is obviously Killer Shack. Orange is road, or any kind of special tile. So road or the wood tower, water tower thing. The red are just regular loops. You know, kind of like your standard LT wall and stuff like that. The green is filler loops, and then the weird, I believe I'm supposed to try to make that yellow. I think that was like some kind of weird yellow, is the main building of the place. And then the weird green teal thing is Dipper Mount. So, of course, as you've already seen as I was speaking, I only made 2 changes to Cold Tower. I added a dip, or a fixed dip or mound spot. A dip or mound, you know, the dip from Area Crows or Garden of Joy, where it kind of just dips into the floor, and the mound, obviously, I would say fairly iconic mountain where a gen can spawn at. I don't know why really I decided to add one of these to every map. I did. I felt like it'd be more interesting if there's a fixed in place spawn, one you can, you know, rely on, like a good escape or something, or a good cutoff point. And for Killer Shack, what problem a lot of maps in this game have a problem with, I say problem twice, I probably did, is how much synergy loops have. Now that might seem like a weird thing to complain about, but for me, or in my opinion, in my humbly egotistical opinion, I think that one of the biggest changes, or one of the biggest problems with maps, is just how well loops can connect to other loops, which in most cases is not really that often. But when it comes to Killer Shack, considering how, like, strong Killer Shack is for Survivor, I think it'd be better if Shack was more isolated. You know, like, you can, you know, you take it, it's kind of like a high risk, high reward thing. You can risk running into a bunch of filler loops to, you know, get a strong loop to, you know, loop the killer, or you can, you know, risk it and then die and not make it because of the filler loops that strong. And most maps in the game, believe it or not, their Killer Shack is very well connected with some other loop or some other main building. You'll see this a lot with Macmillan. Most Macmillan maps have some sort of loop very close to it. So one of the more common changes you'll see is me trying to separate Killer Shack from other loops, isolate it to make it a bit harder for survivors to connect it with other loops, and a bit easier for killers to cut off survivors before they're able to get to that point. And for Cold Tower, I just, you know, I moved it up a tile because it's really the only dead, or I guess, place where filler loops can loop. And even then, you could still probably easily connect it with the road. But, you know, I don't really think Cold Tower needed a lot of changes. I don't think it hurt that badly to play on that map. So I didn't really see it as awful that it wasn't that big or didn't have super isolated. So, and out of every map in the game, I think this is one of the maps that need the least amount of changes. Which means a lot of things, considering I have not even double-digit subscribers. Alright. Next, we have Ironworks of Misery. Now, this one is a more drastic change than Cold Tower. Ironworks, I think, personally, is a fairly survivor-sided map. I think that mostly has to do with its main building, more than anything, really. But nonetheless, I decided to mix it up a bit, try to keep it you know, a bit less actually I guess a bit more connected in some ways. As you can see here, once again, isolated the Killer Shack, made sure that it's a more risky option to go for, but you still get rewarded if you're able to make it. I moved the foundry over to leave more room on the right for a bit more loops, because I feel like if you make a main building a bit too close to the edge, it will not leave enough room to make like the whole map dynamic. You know, you can either have a main building at the edge and then have the, you know, that one small corner with barely any space, a big boring kind of just basic areas, or you can push it more to the center and make it so more of the whole map is dynamic in its looping structure. Looping structure doesn't make sense. Of course, what goes from left to right, road, I cut it off by one tile, and then I moved it to the edge. I'll make it a bit more of a risky option. Most of these changes, you'll probably hear me say risky a lot, and most of these changes is to make looping or trying to connect loops a bit more risky, you know. So if they're able to chase well, they're able to loop well, they get highly rewarded for their good looping. And if they don't playing well or they make a big mistake, the killer can capitalize off it very easily. So I decided to cut off the road a bit. For the most part, the wood tower bit at the top, I kept it where it is. I did move it over a tile, kind of to block off this loop, or the one loop at the top left to connecting to the loop and Dippin' Mound there. But yeah, there's a bit more of an isolated loop here that really only connects to the road. And then in the corner, far right, like I said, I got a single loop here with dip or mounds. So like, you know, if you have balanced landing or something, you can get out of there quickly. But yeah, I kept that a bit isolated too. The bottom right, I have another tower that kind of blocks off the foundry from the two connected loops here. And then I have the foundry connecting to a single loop by itself. I don't really know how most of these map changes work in game, quite honestly. For all I know, these could be awful changes and actually be worse for both sides. I doubt that though, because, you know, they say if you don't got confidence, you got no point in saying stuff. No one's ever said that in their life, but I don't care. For the next one, Sheltered Woods. This one is probably one of the most drastic changes. For the most part, redid the layout, and I also added a couple new structures, which I called tree clusters. Don't really have a visualization for the tree cluster it could look like. I'm mainly thinking of the one unused tree from the original Sheltered Woods. It would kind of look like two. I don't really know how to explain it. I remember it being like a ghost, like something like that. Maybe the picture of God and that one guy pointing fingers like E.T. I don't know. Just a bit more dynamic tree looking areas to mix up the terrain a bit. Of course, this is kind of in. Sorry, my lord, I'm burpy as hell. This cluster is very kind of the opposite of what I said I tried to do with most of my changes. It's very connected with shack. I guess tree clusters, they would work as a road, similar to that. But nonetheless, you got two tree clusters kind of covering the shack on its the front and the right. Got a dipper mound on the outer edges. You got a loop to the corner or to the right of that mound. So, you know, you can jump off, use balance, get to the next loop, and stay safe. Above in the top left, got more of an isolated loop by itself. Then you move over to the right, you got the tree, a bit more to the edge. I'm a hypocrite. I just talked about how you shouldn't move things to the edge, but don't make fun of me. And to the right of that, you got two more connecting loops. And then below the tree, you got more tree clusters. Now, one thing you'll notice is I did, in fact, remove a loop. I feel like 5 loops is a bit much for a map that really wouldn't be as big once I changed it, because of course, as you see, I kind of changed the layout entirely. It's a lot smaller than it was before, so I felt like 4 loops might be a bit too much, or 5 loops might be a bit too much, and that's also why I added the tree clusters, kind of like a mini loop in itself, kind of the way the road functions. So I don't like I'm going to say for every single one of these changes, I really don't know how these will play out in game. My goal with this change was to make this map a lot more dynamic when you know, playing the game in it, making it a bit more fun for both sides. Because let's be fair, this is probably one of the most boring maps in the game. I mean, look at it compared to like Groaning Storehouse, which you'll see later. Like Groaning Storehouse has got a lot of stuff going on. This map is like virtually nothing going on with it. So Hopefully it's a lot more dynamic. Hopefully it would be a lot more fun to play on, a lot more visually interesting. Beyond that, I got nothing else, so let's move on to this one. Shelter Suffocation Pit. Big FU to this map. This is one of my least favorite maps in the game. Like, just look at this, the horse shit that's contained in the center. 5 connecting loops. Absolutely ridiculous. Like, completely, like, one of the stupidest things I've ever seen in my life. Like, you got 5 strong loops. Or they don't even have to be strong loops. They'll just be strong loops by default because of the way that the map is laid out. So what I did is I decided to split the loops up and kind of shrink the map a bit because it's a bit annoying in how large it is. Can I wait? Well, okay, so it's the same length, but it's a bit smaller in the corner. So I wanted to completely change this map. I'm not gonna lie. I kind of wanted to take a little syringe, drain it of its blood, and put in new blood. Blood transfusion. But instead, I decided to keep it similar to what it was. Once again, I tried to isolate Shack from most loops, because beforehand, holy balls, man, this Shack had so much going on with it. And I decided to move most of its activity to the bottom right corner of the map. As you see here, we have 2 of the towers, or the wood stacks, in the corner, with the mound in the center, and 2 loops on the outside of the mound. This part of the area, this part of the map will probably be its strongest point, which I think is fine. It'd be much better than it is before. I think out of most changes, this is the one I'm confident would be much better than the original map design. Of course, you move up, you got one little isolated loop, I guess, which is loosely connected from the mine shaft to the bottom right. And speaking of mine shaft, you go up, you got the mine shaft in the corner. I know I just said several times. I know I just said that you should not put a main building in a corner. And I did it twice in a row after saying that. But I swear on my life, it was, I take it back, but not really. And you go from mine shaft to one connected loop. So the mine shaft is a bit more synergy with other maps, or with other loops, which I think is fine. But then Killer Shack is a bit more isolated. And then, you got a bit more going on and spread out throughout the map, besides just everything happening in that one center bit. Honestly, I hate this map so much. Anything would be better than this map. Even if they had the same, even if they just like moved all the 3 bottom loops down one and then moved the 2 loops up one, it'd be so much more bearable than it is now. Like, this is so stupid. I hate it. Whoever came up with this map, why are you still at high? Moving on to Groaning Storehouse. So with Groaning Storehouse, I decided to kind of snip its legs. Because honestly, I don't understand what the point of these legs are. These legs kind of, I don't get it. It kind of makes the map feel a lot more separated because you're kind of going out to the edges. I also think it makes it harder for Killer to keep control of the map when there's you have to go so far out of the way of the map itself. So I decided to do, I snipped the legs and I kind of, in a way, just flipped them on their side. I did this for 2 reasons. One, to make the map feel like it's more connected, more cohesive. Like, it makes more sense that the way it is, right? Or the way it makes more sense if there's no extruding parts that it's hard to reach. I also decided to move the road in the center to kind of make up for the loss of space from the legs. As well as that, I tried to separate the loops a bit more because this top right corner, just like the other 2 legs, were just abysmal to loop on. You got a loop that connects to a road to loop to another road to loop to one of the worst main buildings in the game, in which you can easily connect it to another loop, and then a wood tower, and then another loop, and then, oh, congratulations, you downed them. Well, now you gotta walk halfway across in Argentina to get back to the center, in which all the gens are done and they're already escaped. The same thing would happen if you went loop to road to loop to road to storehouse to road to loop to the 2 loops next to Killer Shack. So then they're able to drop a pallet on your ass, sprint burst over to the Killer Shack, and then connect to the last 2 loops. This one, I kind of wanted to, it still kind of got that feel with it, admittedly, but I feel like making it smaller and more enclosed and more cohesive will make it much easier to run as Killer. So, you start off in the top right corner loop, and then you go road, loop, storehouse, road, Killer Shack, loop, you down them. But instead of having to go from the edge of the goddamn known world, you have to, all you gotta do is hook, and then you're back in the fight. You're already near the center, so you just go to the mound, and then you check your surroundings. So I feel like this would make playing the map a lot more cohesive than it. So, that's mainly it for this. If I wanted, I wanted to go more in depth and rework the main buildings of these maps. But first, I was too lazy, and second of all, I had no idea how I would have done that without just pulling out the MS Paint. So, that's really it for the map changes, honestly. And let's get on to the finishing segment of this video. What's happening, Captains? It's me, Truly Post Production the Third. I think I forgot which generation I'm in. Originally I was going to do a perk section for this video. Straight up, completely forgot to do that. And I'm too lazy to mock up quick graphics for this. So what I'm going to do instead is give you the changes audibly. For agitation, I would make it so any survivor within the terror radius of the killer while transporting bodies would gain a 2% increase. I mean, the killer would gain a 2% increase for every survivor. So that'd be a 2, 4, 6, 8% increase to movement speed while transporting bodies for if there's 4 survivors within the terror radius. For brutal strength, I increased the pallet breaking speed by 5%. I also I would also make it so when kicking a generator, the generator would regress at 150% rather than its base 100%. And then for Unnerving Presence, I actually have a really long thing written out here. When outside your terror radius, survivors trigger skill checks 25% more often when repairing or healing, but will not have a great. But those skill checks will not have a great. See, this is why I've started doing intense proofreading. Basically, when outside of the terror radius, skill checks proc 25% quicker, but those skill checks will not have great skill checks. When within your terror radius, survivors will have great skill checks, but triggering a great skill check will give you no benefit. But triggering a regular skill check will give off a sound notification. But it will not damage the generator. So basically, think of being outside of the terror radius like Merciless Storm. And then within the terror radius, think of it like a kind of like a reverse technician in a weird way. Whenever you do a skill check, or whenever you complete a skill check, there'll be a sound notification, but the generator will not proc. Sound or skill checks though skill checks will appear 25% less often though. I'm sorry if that made no sense, if that was too jumbled. I did not proofread these changes beforehand. I wrote them out once, and that was my bad. Sorry for the inconvenience and the poor timing, script writing, whatever the hell it is. Sorry about that. It was poor. That was so stupid. All right, so that was the end of that. A bit of a incohesive shit show, like most of my videos are. I hope you guys did enjoy, though. I hope you guys like the changes. And as I mentioned, I believe in the tier list portion. If you guys have any thoughts on the changes or more changes you think would work well for the Trapper, let me know. Chat up in the comments. Let's talk about it. Because I'm more than happy to talk about changes to killers. Because, let's be honest, the gap, the skill gap, power gap, whatever it's called, the power vacuum that is held by Nurse and Nurse alone is incredibly detrimental to anyone's want to play any other killer. So, any changes that would be helpful to the weaker killers are good changes, if you ask me. Same thing with map changes. You'll notice as time goes on, I'm going to get a lot more cocky when it comes to talking about my map changes because of how badly I think this game's map design is. But yeah, that's really it for that. This is the end of this. I don't really know what else to say. You guys enjoyed, like, subscribe. And I hate everyone and anyone who worked on Suffocation Pit. Why did you do this to me? Why did you do this to anyone? And why are you still